Greetings. Welcome to the world of Omesha Foundation. Representing Omesha Foundation's A4G Impact Collaborative, I, Aarti Ahuja, are delighted to invite you to join our podcast series, Governance Dialogues, Shaping the Future of AI. A4G Impact Collaborative is a global alliance launched by Omesha Foundation under the leadership of a thought leader, Mr. Nitin Dhawan, who is shaping the AI landscape with Swadharma and Swabhav that shall ensure AI becomes a force for equity, compassion, and sustainability. A4G unites experts, institutions, and policymakers to co-create open solutions and in the space of AI for sustainability, driving ESG transformation and circular economy adoption with data-driven insights, AI for mental well-being, scaling supportive AI frameworks for accessible mental health, and governance of AI, developing ethical, human-centered, and inclusive governance frameworks. We hosted our first event, A4G Horizon Responsible AI Symposium, in partnership with DTU on 16th April this year, taking the collective forward with our international AI collaborators and friends. We present episode 1 of this podcast series, Innovation with Integrity, contributing to this critical global conversation. Today, we are joined with our international friends and earlier guest during the April symposium, Dr. Vivienne Ming, a theoretical neuroscientist, AI expert, and co-founder of Socos Labs, is an expert speaker today. She brings her expertise in using AI to advance education, workforce development, and human potential. Gaurav Rastogi is an amalgamation of being a Silicon Valley AI entrepreneur, spiritual leader, author, and creating meaningful work in the space of mind, attention, and energy flow at ericaworks.com. We welcome you both. And to take it forward today, we have a youth ambassador because the series is an endeavor to build a global community voice of and within AI governance. Representing the youth is our youth ambassador, Mr. Shreshth Garg, a student of Delhi Technological University, who will be moderating the conversation. Over to you, Shreshth.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Aarti, for setting the stage. Just a quick intro. I'm Shreshth Garg, and today we are diving into the intersection of neuroscience, technology, and human values with some incredible thought leaders. So, before we get into the deeper questions, hey Gaurav, this is for you. I noticed on your profile that you describe yourself as a spiritual technologist. What does that mean exactly?
Well, I live in the world of spirituality and technology, so I suppose that's the intersection. My overall arc is that spirituality allows us to find meaning and purpose and connection, which are important for human flourishing and thriving. And technology allows us to get things done. And we are we're a technological species, so we know how to use technology down to the core. And so how do you connect this? So visually, just think of connecting the heart and the hands. The hands are the technology, the heart is connected to the source of all the self.
Yeah, that's such a unique perspective. Let's dive into our first theme then, understanding AI bias. Dr. Ming, your work combines neuroscience with AI entrepreneurship at Socos Labs. From your unique perspective, bridging brain science and machine learning, how do you see systemic bias forming in AI systems? And can you please explain what's happening under the hood that most people don't understand?
Sure. To be honest, there's many different ways that bias develops in AI systems, but actually I think the thing that neuroscience would tell us the most is all complex cognitive systems are biased. There is no way to act in a world of uncertainty without bias. We don't know everything. We can never know the exact right choice to make. Even in a game with a limited set of choices, there are better and worse, not really wrong and right. So it is an important starting point to understand. All systems, humans, LLMs like GPT or Claude, rats, cockroaches, we have all got bias in some way or another. And it's just important to understand that. Doesn't mean we have to accept it, but it's an illusion that because it's math, it could somehow be unbiased. In fact, there's a whole math about the way that it can't be, something called the variance bias trade-off, but that's for another day. So let's dive into some of the specifics. For example, large language models. These are amazing systems that can genuinely do superhuman tasks. And in a fundamental way, they're predicting the next word in a sentence. That's all. It could be English sentences. It could be in Hindi. It could be in Mandarin. It doesn't really matter. It's just treating it as a series of numbers, one coming after another. And if you can give it enough data, it can learn to predict that next number, which is a word, very, very well. Well, shock of all shocks, the English language literary corpus has a lot of racial and gender bias in it. I think it's probably fair to assume all of our language histories have that. And so it's right there in these systems. But that's the important thing to understand. It's us. Actually, for me, studying people, that's amazing. I can ask GPT its opinions about things, and I learn about human bias from that. We can actually use that for economic modeling. I can use that for psychological simulations. That quality, while not great, I wish there is the perfect answer to all questions. That quality is something that if you understand it's there, you can make use of. I want to add one additional kind of bias that I bet most people are not aware of. And I suspect we'll spend a lot of time talking about large language models. There are very much other kinds of AI. They are important, but I'll focus here. Large language models, or these transformer models, also have another kind of learning that most people don't appreciate. You can actually send random series of numbers in. They have a little bit of a pattern, but it's not actually a language. Okay. And it will learn to predict the next random number. So they can just learn the pattern in the moment. Well, that may sound amazing, and it is. It really is amazing. Here's a project I launched in which that's terrible. So we're building a system that actually not only has an LLM, it has a reinforcement learning model, and it has other kinds of deep neural networks, and it is to help people who are in a suicidal moment. So maybe a young person texting in to a help center. They're trying to seek help. We're building an AI to help with this. But if we built a large language model and it spoke directly with that person, in other words, it was receiving the text and sending it back, research is very clear, including our own and our collaborators, within just a few iterations, it can be as quick as a few minutes, the person in crisis can talk the LLM into talking them into committing suicide. It learns that pattern so quickly. So that's another kind of bias. The way I often put it is AI knows everything, but it understands nothing. And once we understand the bias is there, but it doesn't mean these systems are unusable. Once we understand that it can know everything, but understand nothing, we can begin to make some progress. And it is interesting how much the bias you can see in an AI really is just a reflection of our own bias.
Yeah, that's so true. That AI is trained on data which is given by humans itself. Yeah. So
it's
also,
a complex mirror,
it's
and it's showing us ourselves back.
Yeah. Yeah, Gaurav, you were saying something.
I think Vivienne said so many amazing things that some of those I was going to say. So now I feel that I have to make new stuff up.
Well, you may be an LLM yourself if you're going to be making stuff up.
You never know. I do dream of electric sheep, I have to say. So, Okay, so the sense is that look, one is if you just look at LLMs as your definition of a working AI, even there the bias is, of course, it's trained on a certain set of data, right? For example, it might be trained on Wikipedia, right? Is that the ground truth? No. And so what happens is it gives us the impression of knowledge, the illusion of actually being able to know something, but it's from very contained knowledge. One, it's only a certain amount of curated knowledge, and two, it's been curated in a particular fashion, and not all the knowledge in the world is written down. So now what do you do with what's in people's head until it is written down? If it's orally transmitted, it hasn't been made into an LLM as well. So that's one problem, which is it gives you the sense that it knows everything, and it does know a lot for sure, but it doesn't actually know everything. You can't know everything because there's always new stuff. But the one thing is, you feel confident that you now have access to the world's information, and that is itself a mistake. So anyone with a ChatGPT or Claude or whatever account, Perplexity, will think that they have now access to all the knowledge. One, it's not enough to have access to information, right? Like Vivienne was saying, it knows a lot but understands very little. You need to know how to wield it. However, we don't know how to wield it. And so most people don't know how to use the AI. So what happens is you get a very sharp knife and very untrained people wielding them, and they will cut themselves. So that's one problem. The other is, the other biases are that these systems in general, LLMs, but all systems in general are designed for maximizing whatever the heck they're maximizing for, right? And usually it's for maximizing engagement, because that's who's building all these systems, right? All the LLMs. So engagement means that you're essentially building things for short-term stuff. So it's going to get you more fear, more outrage, more anger, and all of that. So it's artificially, but very powerfully, they're engaging all the humans and outraging the heck out of us, right? Our attention spans are now low because algorithms know how to work with that, as Vivienne will tell you. And now what to direct our attention to has been stolen, again, like I just said earlier. And how to respond to that thing is also stolen. So that is also another bias that we've now inherited. We don't know how to use all that. The fourth thing I would say is that its sense of time is different. What I mean by that is, when you're using any technology, you have this sense of immediacy. You've asked a question, you get something, right? But you don't get a sense of the slow time. A lot of things you need to process over long periods of time. You need to have a perspective of long time, and all of that is lost because all these interactions are trained to give us not just the fact that it's quick, but also that it doesn't have any perspective of time. And so the problem now is, anyone who's working with this system is being rushed into whatever the heck they're doing. They don't have the time to process. They don't have the time to build their own intuition about anything. And that dependency will make for much worse decision making. And so those are all biases that are creeping into systems that are being built. All the agentic systems that are being built are essentially magnifying this. I'm building agentic systems myself. I can see the challenges with all of those, where each bias is now being magnified. The more systems you put in, the more you magnify your thing. So these are very powerful and extremely dangerous and completely useless as far as humans are concerned, because they have very short order responses. Anyway, so I gave a too long an answer.
Yeah, that's completely fine. That was wonderful. As Vivienne was saying, that the recent news of AI used in enabling suicide is an important question in today's world, because mental health is being affected in today's scenario.
Yeah. So the mental health thing. So my angle is different from Vivienne. So I do spiritual care, and that's the institute that I run. And what we're seeing is the rise in loneliness, the rise in despair. It's across the board. And it's only going to get worse the more and more people primarily interact with an AI as their only means of conversation, right? All you're doing is you're substituting your friends now with a chatbot, which has no empathy, no sense of what it means to thrive, and therefore you're getting bullshit answers. And it's going to worsen this problem of disconnection, lack of meaning, lack of purpose, and essentially we'll just be burnt out much sooner than we want.
Yeah, it's so bad that you have to go to an LLM for help in such situations, just to think about it. Yeah, so Gaurav, your unique blend of technology and spirituality, with your unique blend of this, how do you see AI bias manifesting in real world applications?
Yeah. So, like I said, currently most of the usage is on the chatbot side. And on the chatbot side, clearly you can see that you have an illusion of knowledge. It's trained on wrong data. You can see on X, for example, a lot of people go to Grok to confirm news articles or to get depth. And the problem is, again, it's a very flaky response. But you now assume that that's the final word because this is fact tested by an AI. So we trust the AI too much, in my opinion. And so you can see that in all the chatbot reactions. Like Vivienne was saying, suicidal cases are accelerated because it will helpfully give you ways to terminate yourself. And so those are all things. In other systems, for example, when you build voice AI, when you're transcribing voice or using voice and building all of that, the problem is you're learning conversation patterns from an AI now. And it's going to become more and more artificial. When we talk, we listen to the other person, not as a machine, but as a human. But we're picking up machine patterns, and it'll show up in regular conversation very soon. You will see that both ways, because people are talking to their chatbots, and it will begin to show. The other thing is, what else? Every system what is AI doing currently? Not just the LLM. It's transforming one thing into another. It'll transform images into text descriptions. It'll transform text into written description or data or visuals and so on. All of those are great. They're all wonderful, but they have a very narrow band of creativity. And so it's narrowing the amount of creativity that we can apply. Plus, everything's so easy that we think this is it. Right? All the craft that we could do, all the beauty that we could create, we're now outsourcing to a machine, which does not have any sense of that. And so we will get shittier and shittier products. You're already seeing that the internet content is now completely useless. We've all stopped going to search engines, and pretty soon we'll stop going to social media as well. Again, AI slop is going to overwhelm the entire system because it's so easy.
Yeah, so
well, I was going to do what I often do here, which is cite some papers that directly relate to what you were just talking about. For example, one immediate one is, yes, you can already see evidence that people are changing language based on their interactions with LLM. It's shown up in the sciences. So it's clearly influencing even how scientists are writing their papers, even in cases where it seems like it was written by a human. But in online conversations, you can see evidence of sort of creeping lack of diversity in people's language use. Very likely because they are interacting with bots or using bots to refine their language. Another thing that we can note is in a recent study in which people needed to research a problem and then formulate a persuasive argument to help someone else. And there were three conditions: a library, Google search, and GPT. And the language that was developed, the people were much quicker in writing their essays, their reports, using GPT than they were in the others. But to me, the really telling story in the end was the people that used the library wrote the most persuasive arguments. The people who use Google search had the next most, and the people that use GPT we're the least persuasive in trying to convince people of their side. And a similar discovery is that almost paradoxically, any kind of personalized system, this can be a bot, a large language model, but it can also be all sorts of other kinds of personalization, like the algorithms used in generating content for people to view in social media. Interestingly enough, this is a paper that just came out recently, that personalization of experience causes people to explore less, and yet they become more confident in the very subjects they have least explored. Very confident that they have explored a lot and that they know a lot, and it's not there. So I will say, while I agree with the issues of loneliness, and I have a whole book I'm writing about the psychological construct of purpose, so all of that, one of my principal areas, because I work in human development and I look at education and health, and turns out the best health intervention is a good education. So the thing that worries me is growing evidence that people are using these models to substitute for their own thinking. And without being too alarmist about it, my concern is not just that we're building bad tools, because they're pretty generic tools. You could actually use them in a variety of ways. When I write a book chapter, not a single line has been written by an AI. I give it what I call the nemesis prompt. You are my enemy, my nemesis, my lifelong adversary. Here's the new chapter that I wrote. Find every mistake, tell me why I'm wrong, and how maybe I can fix it. And the neat thing is I can give it different personalities, so it finds different things and gives me different audience perspectives. I use AI to make my life harder, not easier. But the overwhelming use case from Anthropic's own research, some research from OpenAI, Google and Anthropic are more public in their research sharing than OpenAI has been, clearly shows people are using it to substitute from their own thinking much more than they are using it to augment their own thinking. It can do amazing things, but you have to make the effort to get something back. The easy interaction is a substitution for your own thinking, or what we sometimes call self-automation. And my real fear is that is going to have compounding consequences that will be negatively complementary to the loneliness, and the loss of purpose will also be loss of cognitive capacity, a loss of sense of creativity. These are all genuine, real concerns. By the way, concerns I am much more worried about than AI taking over the universe, or some of the other more alarmist problems, which they're not the ones that are facing us right now. And I guess, I also want to plug the reason I've been working in AI for 30 years certainly isn't because it's all bad. One of my companies uses AI in epigenetics. We built the first ever system to predict postpartum depression. I told you about the system for suicide. It chats with the call center worker. So they can run scenarios. Would this message help this person in crisis? Would this message help them? We have projects in promoting pluralism and reducing polarization in politics, and obviously my work in education. As a tool to challenge us and make it better, AI is astonishing. And obviously it well-deserved won a couple of Nobel Prizes this year, but we have to choose to use it that way. And unfortunately, we seem to have neither the cognitive capacity nor spiritual will to do so.
Yeah, that is perfectly what I believe, that we should work with AI rather than let it work for you. Yeah. And AI being in itself is not that creative. It's just trained on data that we provided. It can't create a new art or something, but it can easily copy that Ghibli art trend you all might know. Yeah,
Yeah, a
so
general finding here on creativity is GPT on average will produce more different answers than the average person. But that's not necessarily. GPT is everything it's ever been trained on. A more interesting question is, if I had a team of people that were collaborating together, could it come up with more creative answers than them? And then the answer very quickly is no. It doesn't take many people. They don't have to be geniuses to produce more outlier. And I think this is where a lot of the research on AI creativity has missed the mark. It's not just the number of creative ideas as judged in a variety of different metrics. The best research has looked at, of those ideas, which are the ones that go on and have an impact. And almost invariably, the best ideas come from teams of humans collaborating with AI. That collaborative, I sometimes call it hybrid collective intelligence. I all the time call it that. That is amazing. It leverages humans' ability to explore the unknown and AI's fairly robust ability to supply the known. Not perfectly, as you point out, but with real depth. So this is one thing AI can do, which is take two very different but well-known ideas that humans are unlikely to have studied both of these very disparate fields and bring them together. That is a form of creativity that AI, particularly LLMs and reinforcement learning models, have shown recently. But if you pair that with this exploration capability that remains largely uniquely human, amazing stuff comes out of that.
yeah. So we have explored how bias forms and how it impacts people's lives. Now let's talk about solutions. What we can do differently to make AI more inclusive and supportive of human well-being. So Gaurav, what role do mindfulness and spiritual consciousness play in developing AI systems that are more equitable and human-centered? And can these approaches complement technical solutions?
Yeah. So the whole point of all our spiritual wisdom that's accumulated over thousands of years is to answer the question, how do we thrive as a species, as a planet, as a living entity? And those answers are result in patterns of practice, the things that we do to find meaning, to find joy, to find connection, to find some sort of clarity of thought and vision and execution, all that. So that's the purpose of all the spiritual work that generally comes together, right? Which is how to unite with God. But in the Hindu context, we say uniting with God means that your heart is now open, your head is now clear, and your hands are now acting very clearly in whatever your purpose in life is. You're doing that. How that informs the AI is very simply, AI is just another new iteration of technology, just the smartest version of it. But we're not strangers to technology, right? We're not a fully biological species ourselves anyway, right? We are designed to talk. We have outsourced our digestion to fire. We use tools that have helped us survive despite being a weaker kind of primate. All of those are clear indications that we're a technological species. So I don't think we should worry about what AI will do to us. Whatever it will do to us is the same thing that other technologies have done to us as well, which is over long periods of time, shape us into a different kind of human being, maybe shrink our brains a little, because now we're outsourcing a lot of our thinking. Now, the thing is, how does spirituality inform the use of technology? And here, my position is that it must absolutely be at the center of your understanding of the world itself and the usage of technology. Right now, what's happening is we believe in the religion of science, which does not believe in any sort of internal connectivity or a purpose or meaning. Those are all non-rational things. And the problem with that is we now just have a calculative understanding of each other, right? Everything is just how much utility does this person or this interaction have for me? That's not how any society functions over the long haul. And so what we need to have is bring back a sense of long time, which is in our deep understanding that things are not just happening in the immediate. There's a long context to everything. Things move slowly and quickly at the same time. And so it'll deepen our sense of connection with the universe itself, not just as individualized beings. Right now what's happening is, where's the technology being made? It's being made in America or China, both of which places have a very poor sense of what makes a society thrive. We live in California, and clearly we have a very documented poor sense of what makes a society thrive. And it's the same in China, because they've lost a lot of their connection to traditional wisdom over the last, couple of decades or several decades of communism. Net, what's happening is that's where the technology is being made. And that's radiating out into the world as this completely mechanical, mechanized vision of the world. That will create more dystopia unless we learn to go back to the fundamentals. How does the universe work? How does an individuality work? What is the nature of the self? Those are all questions that are not in AI, that are deep within the individual. And for that, you need to sit and meditate. You need to sit and observe. You need to participate in the community. And through those doings, you'll have a deeper sense of all of this stuff. And then you can use the technology. So what I'm saying, just to wrap everything up, is it is not a choice of choosing spirituality versus technology. You have to do both. But how must you do both? If you do only technology, you will arrive at a world where everything is just numbers, and everyone, it has a certain utility value that you're computing on your little Ray-Ban thing. There'll be a vision display that says, here's the utility of this person, the social score or whatever. The point is, it's a very poor vision of society. And how we feel that is, we feel that in the emptiness in our hearts. And then it makes for very poor interaction. It's a very bad situation for humans. So coming back, we need to have a deeper respect for spirituality, which will allow us to be better users of technology.
Yeah, humans are separated from robots in this sense only, that we have a spiritual inner self that we can go to.
How do you know? How do you know robots don't have inner monologues?
We have yet to find out. And AI is...
Philip K. Dick, would I disagree? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Vivienne, I'd love to hear your vision on this, because you're a neuroscientist, and that's interesting. You know the insides of the brain more than any of us.
Well, what's interesting is there are to be active. Now, these are complex computations in my world, so they're hard to interpret, but they seem to be accurate in moments that are you versus not you. This voice that I'm hearing right now I know it's my voice. Although someone with schizophrenia might have a very hard time distinguishing it. Am I doing the talking or someone talking to me? And there are some other disorders that have similar challenges. What's interesting is you see disorders in these very regions. Does that mean you're there? Or it captures some of the spiritual qualities we're talking about? It very much does not mean that, but it does seem to be part of the code of, this is me, this hand is me. And if I have what's called alien hand syndrome, where I feel the lack of ownership of a limb, alien limb, then again, often what you will see is these regions are not active, even though they would normally be active for me making these hand motions. So there's interesting things. What does this mean for AI? Well, if I do neuroscience on an AI, if I do the equivalent of sticking wires in and recording from neurons, and I look for this center, this area that seems to have an eye versus a not, there isn't a clear one that has emerged. This is hard to say because, OpenAI won't let us do that with its models. So we often have to use models like some of the open source ones that are released by China by Facebook and by some other groups. But it isn't clear that they have this posterior cingulate activity, for example, that I'm talking about, or an insular cortex that generally prefers one thing over another. So could we get there? Here actually is an interesting addition and complement to some of the earlier conversation. There was a special issue of the Proceedings of National Academy of Science recently that looked at using bots and simulations to look at classic game theory problems. You know, all of these economic games like the Prisoner's Dilemma and the Dictator game, all these different ones, which generally speaking, if you're a pure utilitarian, then you're just waiting for the perfect time to stab everyone else in the back and steal all the money. What was interesting is in one of these papers, if you built into a bot, an agent, a theory of mind, is it the same as the theory of mind that we as humans have? I can't say that, but all I can say is if you built a specific component that's meant to guess or even predict at what's going on inside the heads of the other agents, those agents that have theory of mind are more likely to collaborate. They're more likely to cooperate with the other agents in the game. And I don't know, that's kind of heartening to know that even a cold-hearted agentic machine, if it just could understand the other side of the game, is more likely to collaborate and cooperate. It says something good maybe about all of us.
I got flashback of all those wonderful Oliver Sacks and BSR books, Vivienne.
Yes.
So Vivienne, my next question to you is, at Socos Labs, you're working on inclusive innovation, right? So can you walk us through what that looks like in practice? How do you design AI systems that actively support workplace equity and mental health?
So the starting point for me is simple. I'm here to solve problems. I'm not here to build AI. In fact, if I don't have to build anything, all is the better. Almost every problem I work on, and these range from little kids with life-threatening illnesses to global scale education policy and everything in between. So we're looking at economic inclusion, political instability, early life education. If it's about people, I'm interested. Because my belief, in fact, forgive me, it is the title of my upcoming book, which is Robot Proof: When Machines Have All the Answers, Build Better People. But if we want to build better people, we have to be careful about some of the traps I'm talking about. We can't build tools, whether they're cultural tools or technologies, that does that for you. We need to make better people, not people that are simply using better technology. And this is really important to me. So whenever a new problem walks in my door, and most of them come from the outside, Dr. Ming, my daughter has 500 seizures a day, please save her life. Or Dr. Ming, our company does everything we can to take bias out of our hiring process, but we know it's still there. And trust me, I've had racial bias, I've had caste bias, I've had gender bias. Every bias all over the world has come through my door at some point or another. Despite the fact that I supposedly build AI systems, step one in every single project is go and watch it happen. Go and watch this little girl experience a seizure. Go and watch people getting promoted or not. Watch the Make-A-Wish Foundation ring a doorbell to visit a family of a dying child to grant them a wish. If you're going to make a difference in a problem that no one's ever been able to solve before, then I guess the way I put it is there are only ever messy human problems, and they only ever have messy human solutions. Once you have some idea of what to do, then maybe AI can help change the economics of that solution. Or maybe AI is a tool for me, someone who's been using it for 30 years, to explore the problem and discover why it is it's been so hard to understand. So I've done both. Been able to make tools and release them in the world, for example, to reduce bias in hiring, or a new project we're doing right now to identify what my collaborators call emerging dignity wounds. We're not making a judgment, a call about whether people are being realistic, but are we seeing online a group of people, let's say young men, that feel they don't have a good opportunity to start a family and they're unhappy about it, and they're looking for simple answers. So let's call that a dignity wound. Doesn't matter whether they are right or not. That is how they're feeling. Is it possible, in our case, developing an AI, but that's not the magic answer, is it possible to actually change some of what they're seeing online to get them to not see young women as the enemy, or to get them to not see an education as the enemy? Like all the educated men are starting families and I don't get to start one. Are there ways of showing them that there's a different way of viewing the world that isn't full of enemies? And so we're actually just launched this project recently and running it at scale. So again, what it really boils down to is doing AI for good isn't about the AI. That's like saying I do hammers for good. Don't hit people with hammers. But it's about, are we solving a real human problem and understanding its genuine, messy complexity? And then and only then is there a role for technology in bringing that solution out into the world. So for me, that's very much the approach. It makes it just naturally human-centered and human first, because it's always about the actual experiences of people involved. The thing that I virtually guarantee drives 99% of the problems with AI today is it's just an engineering problem. Come up with a really good idea in a lab, build it, train it up, release it, I'm done. I can imagine a world in which my fancy new toy solves all of these problems. Therefore it does. I call this the imagination disease. And it haunts every brilliant person who thinks they're doing good in the world. If instead you approach problems with humility and you appreciate you yourself are not smart enough to figure it out on your own, and it's not just an engineering problem, only then do you have a hope of making a difference.
Yeah, that's wonderful how you handle all these problems at your workplace in real life. We can't expect AIs to give solutions. We can make iterations with them. Yeah, so we have looked at the challenges and the solutions to this systemic bias and AI bias. Now, let's turn our gaze forward. What kind of future could these approaches create? So, Mr. Gaurav, if you could change one thing about how AI is developed today, what would make the biggest difference in ensuring equitable and spiritually conscious outcomes?
I'd actually just double down on what Vivienne said. Make better humans. I think we need to make it harder for people to. Let me explain that. The thing is, people need to go through challenges, their own sense of discovery. People don't need to do the hard things so that they can become the people that they need to become. And that's how you're going to make better systems. The problem is, if we build more and more powerful tools, the story of Bhasmasur, and Vivienne, this is a sort of Indian context, but there's a person who does thousands of years of hard work and goes to Shiva, and then he says, okay, ask for any boon. He says, give me the power to turn anything into ashes. So think of Midas touch, but the reverse of that. So anything I touch can turn into ashes. And Shiva says, okay, you got it. And then he first tries to touch Shiva's head in order to test this boon. So obviously this isn't going to work. So Shiva runs away, he goes to Vishnu and he says, Vishnu, you need to help me. And then Vishnu has to come in and help him. The point is the power, being given the power to destroy everything, our education system, our brains, our knowledge, our society, is not a good power. We must learn to wield it. It's very powerful. We can create new things, but we must become the people that are worthy of those tools. And so that vairagya, that dispassion, that discrimination, those are the things that must be cultivated in the humans. And so that's the one thing I'd say. The technology is at a point where it will recursively get better and better. There's no stopping that train. So I don't think it's the technology we need to worry about. It's the worsening of the humans that I think we should worry about.
Yeah, that's right. I would just like to quote Tony Stark from Iron Man. He said, if you are nothing without the suit, you should not own it. So if you are nothing without the AI tools, you should not be using it. So
All right, Jarvis.
a question coming from the community: is there is a new personality type emerging with AI usage, integrating in the environment? What can be the characteristic of this new personality?
I'll start, and I'll try to keep it quick because I know it might be getting late for us here in America. But there was actually some research done by a group at Harvard that looked at how people interact, particularly, again, within LLMs. And they kind of discovered three broad categories. Self-automators. People whose personality is, I want to make my life as easy as possible. Well, this is the exact opposite of what we were just talking about. So self-automators probably don't realizing it, but they are ultimately self-harmers. The next group are the centaurs. Everything is either an AI task or a human task. Take it, judge it, split it. And if it's an AI task, you either do what the AI tells you or you just ignore it completely. One or the other. This is better, but it still isn't there. The last group, and as someone who went to graduate school to build cyborgs, literally that's what I told people, this appeals to me because they called them the cyborgs. And every task was co-creation. Every task was a feedback. And if you didn't like what the AI gave you, you said, no, you don't understand. And they pushed back. And it became a dynamic. And what I love is the cyborgs had the chance to build something better than what either the tool or the person could have done on their own. Unfortunately, in my research, the cyborgs are there. They're there in the data. But they are a relatively small population. We need to pull more people into it. We need to figure out what the emerging personality characteristics are that tell me my life will be better if I actually make it harder just in this moment. And that's a crucial set of skills. There are some that are obvious, like resilience, purpose, construct purpose is a huge predictor. Our meta uncertainty, maybe an idea you've never heard of before, but a sense of your own certainty or uncertainty about a problem. These are all turn out to be very predictive of people using AI in positive ways. So these are kind of the interesting emerging personality characteristics. Some of them are deeply, classically, fundamentally human. Some are kind of emerging and nuanced and new. But it's that hybrid intelligence that's come out of all of this that to me becomes, what are the big five personality constructs of hybrid intelligence? When it disappears. Sometimes people talk about artificial general intelligence as the next thing, if it's not something we already have. I actually jokingly once called something artificial general a luck. When AI disappears, it just merges into the background of our lives and everything just happens. Do you dream of a world where everything's easy Or do you dream of a world when that amazing fortuitous happenings are actually challenges that make you better? And the nature of those dreams, I think, tells the story of the future of human and AI.
Yeah,
Amen
the
to
basic.
that.
Yeah, Gaurav. Sorry.
No, I was just saying amen to that. So in terms of personality types, I agree. I think the problem is that it's become so easy to slack. So we become a consumption economy. We're now going to be outsourcing our thinking also to machines. And what that means is everything is cheap and therefore nothing has value. And how do we create people that want to connect, that want to take on challenges, that want to create? That kind of work is needed. But unlikely that that'll happen. What's more likely is we'll just go down our consumption culture, and most people will just be passive consumers of intelligence on tap, available for free and ubiquitous. And that means that they're going to stop thinking and just outsource all of that to a machine. The centaurs and the cyborgs, the people that are actually melded their personalities with the AI will be really, really rare, but will be really, really successful, because it's a great time to be alive. I say this to my friends, because now there's things that you could previously imagine but not do, you can imagine and do. So now your imagination can work harder and create amazing things. It's a wonderful time to be in the world of technology and the world at large.
Yeah, the basic nature of human is adaptation, which
Yeah.
which is a unique quality of us. So moving forward to Dr. Ming, this is my next question. As both a researcher and an entrepreneur, what's your vision for how inclusive AI could transform learning environments, mental health support, and workplace dynamics in the next 5 to 10 years? And what excites you the most?
Well, first, I need to say goodbye to Gaurav. And so many things really excite me here. And so many that it would be hard for me to march through all of the things. You know, I have a couple of companies, I have a dozen philanthropic projects. I have my books, my work at UC Berkeley. I love that I have so many things. And if we look at the good and the bad here, the bad is emerging evidence that there increasingly aren't easy pathways for young people to enter the workforce. Eric Bjornson has a new paper out with colleagues showing a decrease in employment in young people in AI-exposed jobs. I think that needs replication before we're 100% confident in his finding, but it's provocative, and it aligns with some people's theories about this. Well, if you just spent 4 years at university and then 2 years at law school to become a junior lawyer so that you could someday become a senior lawyer, well, now they don't need that junior lawyer anymore. Now they don't need a junior coder. They just keep the senior coders on staff. And the AI is kind of the one that they're mentoring. So one problem we need to solve is how does someone go from a novice immediately into a market that's asking them to be an expert?
Yep.
Because some of what I've talked about, like to be that cyborg, you need to, paradoxically, despite AI knowing so much, in my metaphor, that it knows everything but understands nothing, is you need to know it too. Because what you need to know is that border where suddenly its knowledge starts collapsing. You need to know. I have a metaphor or an analogy that comes out of my own life. It won't necessarily work for everyone, but working with an LLM is very much like working with one of my graduate students. which is to say they're brilliant. They are brilliant. But they haven't been doing science for 30 years. They know more about the problem they're researching than I do, but they don't see the edges of their knowledge the way I do. They don't see why an idea they had didn't work, where often I will. And so that's so much like working with Gemini or Claude, where I would never accept one of its answers without strongly reviewing it, looking for the holes, and strangely enough, using it to challenge my holes and my gaps. So we really, and this is true everywhere, US, China, India, East Africa, you could go anywhere in the world. The more so if the British ever touched it, but it's true everywhere. We have built an education system training children how to answer well-posed questions that have right and wrong answers. And now we have machines that do that better.
Yep.
We need to completely rebuild both our education system and our workforce, the way we hire and promote, based on something very, very different, which is your ability to be you, truly and uniquely you. What is an idea that you have had that no one else in the world has ever had? That's how I run my labs. I insist that my students and my employees pitch me ideas. We're working on a problem no one's ever solved before. Give me an idea. And here's the hard part. I shoot down 99% of their ideas. And as soon as I do, I need them to pitch me a new one. Because that engine of us going through that produces something that neither of us could have done on our own, or none of us could have done. That's very much like working as like a cyborg with an AI, is getting that amazing dynamic going. But we haven't trained anyone to do that. Right now, it's just the mad scientists of the world that are engaged in this way with LLMs. We exist. We might even be a measurable percentage of the population, but we are a very small population. We need to double that. We need to multiply it by 10. It'd be a dream to think we're going to change everyone in the whole world, even with decades to spare. But we need many more people to stop obsessing over whether they're getting all the right answers on a standardized exam that an AI could trivially easily answer, and instead build human beings to do what human beings have always been, as you yourself was just saying, have always been uniquely capable of, different than almost any other animal or machine on the planet, which is we live and thrive everywhere in almost every condition, even conditions that seem unbelievably difficult. We are explorers, for good and bad. That is our superpower. And unfortunately, we've built an education system that seems to think that we are simply a tool on an assembly line. And maybe that was great for 100 years, but it does not work anymore. And that's the challenge in both education and workforce that we've got to overcome. We need to build explorers and be able to supply them with something meaningful and purposeful to do in the world. And I'm going to be a little bit more pointed here. Because we are not going to be able to do that for everyone, then I propose the following. Every bridge in the United States, every bridge in India gets rebuilt. Every crumbling highway gets reconstructed. We're not going to bring everyone along for this journey. But that doesn't mean they shouldn't have work with dignity. So can we do things that we as society needs anyways? We're supposedly going to get this huge AI dividend, all this increased productivity. Well, if we get that, let's use that to build the things we genuinely all need as a society, and in so doing, create meaning and work for people that are ready to do meaningful work, but maybe aren't ready to create that work for themselves.
Yeah, that's so right. I also believe in this, that our education system builds us to solve, till now, to solve maths, science, and other subjects, history, and all. But AI can genuinely do it better now, in my opinion. So we have to create something like that people start to think more. The implementation can be done, can be used, AI can be used in it. Coming to the other point, yes, AI is taking the job of freshers. And that's my genuine question. How will freshers become experts if they don't get the intuition behind it? So that's still a question to uncover.
And I think it's a question for every society to figure out. I have explored these sorts of problems for decades. I don't have an answer. I don't believe anyone is taking this problem as seriously as they ought to, or have easy answers. The thing I'm afraid of is essentially the workforce kind of becomes a little bit like TikTok or YouTube, where everyone just goes out and throws crazy stuff online and hopes that it connects, and it's all just noise, and we never really learn how to build anything lasting.
Yeah, that's so true. So it's been a long conversation and a powerful one. So today we have explored how bias forms inside AI systems and why it matters for human dignity. How inclusive innovation can create fairer workplaces and stronger support for mental health. And what the future might look like when technology is guided by both science and human values. One clear message stands out: AI doesn't just shape our systems, it shapes our humanity. And it's up to us to ensure that future is inclusive and equitable. I would like to thank my guests, Dr. Vivienne Ming, for sharing her vision at the cutting edge of neuroscience and AI, and to Mr. Gaurav Rastogi, which had to leave, for bringing in the wisdom of spirituality and mindfulness into this dialogue. You have both given us so much to reflect on. So, this was just the beginning. Episode 2 of Governance Dialogues will be released on 22nd September. Stay tuned as we bring in new voices, new perspectives, and new solutions. For those who want to dive deeper, you can follow our speakers on LinkedIn and check out the A4G Collaborative for more resources on responsible AI. All links will be in the description below. Thank you to the audience for tuning in. Your curiosity and engagement are what makes these dialogues meaningful. I am Shreshth Garg, and this has been Governance Dialogues, shaping the future of AI. Until next time, let's keep building technology. Now, I would like to call Ms. Aarti, the director at A4G, to conclude the podcast.
Thank you, Shreshth. And it's truly been a beautiful, enlightening experience. And this educational intervention today reminds me what Lyndon Baines Johnson, the 36th president of USA, said once: if future generations are to remember us with more gratitude than sorrow, we must achieve more than that, just the miracles of technology. We must also leave them a glimpse of the world as it was created, not just as it looked when we got through with it. And our conversation today just highlights the same thing, with deep gratitude to our friends Dr. Vivienne Ming and Gaurav Rastogi for this intervention of thought. As during the discussion, Dr. Ming said, the best intervention is education, and Gaurav stirred our conscious awareness in the space of AI, making awareness fuller within ourselves, more mindful in the present moment, with human uniqueness as the miracle of creation that both highlighted in their works. We would like to thank our youth ambassador Shreshth in shaping the first episode from imagination to conversation in the moment. Along with him, the A4G team that has brought the broadcast series together. Gratitude towards our thought leader, Mr. Nitin Dhawan, Mr. Jyotika Dhawan, and our wise advisors of the A4G Collaborative. Like, follow, and collaborate with us on the upcoming podcast this September and in the year forward. We thank you all and look forward to your participation in the next conversation in the space of governance dialogues, shaping the future of AI. Thank you.